I was there. I don't have to listen to it.
This week's show because it was a disaster.
When you live in a beach resort, it's easy to forget whether you are playing or working. On each week's show, we settle in with a cocktail and try to figure out if there is a difference. This is Day Drinking on Delmarva.
And I am Todd from GoodCleanFunLife.com.
And I am Tony. I'm sorry. I am award-winning writer Tony Russo. No relation. I've been meaning to do that for 2 weeks, and you're listening to Day Drinking on Delmarva, a podcast about life and culture, and now nostalgia on the Delmarva Peninsula. Todd drinks because he gets to live here. I drink because I have to live here. So much fun going on this week. We're gonna add a new section where we're gonna go through our photos, and for those of you listening, that don't worry about it. We're gonna describe the pictures, and the pictures aren't as important as the stories that go with them. Mm-hmm. But Todd and I were talking earlier this week, and we've been taking photographs as a primary part of our livings. I mean, for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we've never once said, hey, maybe if we talk about some of those photos we took, we'll have something interesting that people want to hear about.
We wouldn't take 15 minutes at the beginning of the show to be like, what did we do?
Yeah.
What was that again?
So exactly. We'll hopefully be starting closer to on time because we'll definitely have something to talk about. I'm really excited. I'm excited for this week's photo that I brought, and I'm excited for the one that I was looking for and couldn't find because I know that it's someplace, and I think that'll make a fun show. Okay. But let's get started. And before we get started, we always like to thank our sponsor. Our sponsor is the drinks that we are drinking, as well as a local business that we're particularly proud of. So I'm going to start with the drink that I'm drinking, and it is gin and flavored seltzer. This is all right. So my wife gets this flavored seltzer with juice, which is apparently better than flavoring. I don't know. I generally don't drink flavored seltzers. Right. But this is grapefruit. It tastes like Fresca, which is fine. Which is fine with me. If you put gin in grapefruit flavored seltzer, as long as it's juice flavored, I guess, it tastes like Fresca. So it's fine. Not my first choice, but we're all out of gas. I didn't know that there was a problem, but I ran out and bought, and I didn't run out. Years ago, I got one of those Soda Streams, and Soda Stream changed the design. Mm-hmm. And those of us that have been using it for whatever 8 years or so, they're like, "Oh well, screw you, buy another one." It's like Apple, except cheaper, but makes me angrier for some reason.
because they have no business copying a tech giant's
success
to the top by coming up with a new port every year.
Right. And also my wife isn't motivated to find a new solution because she really likes the flavored stuff. And anyway. And how about you? What are you drinking? And can you tell us a little bit about our sponsor?
My personal sponsor this week is Bullet Bourbon, as I like to have with an ice cube. And the business sponsor of this week is GoodCleanFunLife.com. Maybe more specifically, GCFL Productions. And talking about photos and what we've been doing for the better part of a decade, or more than a decade rather, was founded by going out and taking photos. This was something that Natalie, my wife, and I started 15 years ago, 2009. And this was, if you can remember way back to 2009, not everybody had an iPhone 12 or even an iPhone. I think the iPhone had just come out the year prior. And going to events and bars specifically where there was just people hanging out, having a good time, seeing somebody with a camera was rather unusual.
Right.
We got some hairy eyeballs from some patrons, some friends, some family that were concerned about what we were doing. We thought we were doing weird things. And here we are all this time later, and it's our livelihood, our business, and our passion. So suck it to all those people with the hairy eyeballs.
one of the things that I think we had touched on it last week. But we've talked about how you make videos. That is what my one cool thing is going to be, but I'm going to stick it in your commercial anyway. I don't know if you saw that last week you mentioned that we were talking about tag. We were talking about professional tag.
Yep.
And you said, well, they're really just making it for TikTok. And then later in the week, Neiman Lab, which is like the Harvard journalism department,
Right.
put out a story about how late night talk shows don't really care very much about listeners because everybody sees everything on TikTok anyway, and that's where they're
Yeah.
TikTok and reels and stuff. So I thought it was really insightful for a person in the industry to to be that, because I'm like, this is stupid, and you're like, yeah, it's stupid on television, but
they still have to make you television.
yeah.
me and Neiman Labs, we got the mind meld going on.
But have you gotten much into doing the Instagram and TikToks for increasingly when I'm looking at jobs, when I'm looking for work, I see jobs for people, and the idea is, yes, we want you to take our podcast and we want you to chop it up into TikTok videos and put it out. So that's a thing.
That is absolutely a thing, and something that I haven't done for this podcast, which is solely the reason we don't have the same listenership as Mark Maron or Joe Rogan, because we started the same time, and that's what they do. So that's the only difference. No, I have dabbled with that, a lot. The Reels format is basically Instagram's version of TikTok, and so it is a in-app editor. And then the most amazing shift that is happening is, you used to get kicked off of Facebook if there was a Warner Brothers song playing in the background, and now that is getting, now they're kind of succumbing to the fact that people are using no more than a minute worth of audio, and TikTok is very audio driven. So it's been a good shift for that aspect of my work and what I do, and being able to have more freedom to use recognizable sounds. But yeah, that's that's where everything seems to be headed. I've even loosened my position on vertical versus horizontal versus landscape video.
It is so difficult because, I mean, are they going to really just have us turn our TV sideways in another couple of years? Like, are we that lazy?
I don't. So one of the best things, and why it was such a strong held belief for me was, aesthetically, a landscape. If you think about every major motion picture that has been made on anamorphic format, this is like it's a square sensor, but it gives this real breadth. Is that, I'm not saying it right?
Yeah, but the D is hard. It's breadth. And it's wide. That's why they said wide angle. That's why they have letterbox, and it has, and it mimics. Somebody said it best. Like, our eyes are like horizontal, right? And our world is horizontal.
But our windows are vertical. Our phones are vertical, and that's just how things have evolved. So
I remember when Letterbox came out, my father was furious because he just remembered everything being square. He's like, why isn't it square? I'm like, those movies you watch on television, you're not even seeing all of them. Like,
yeah.
And a lot of the classic movies had the movies cut up so that they would fit on television rather than have the television extended. But I don't know if complaint is the right way to say it, but every time I see something that's a result of laziness, and I think that I don't for a second agree that it's anything. This isn't an aesthetic choice. This is a lazy choice. It's easier to hold your phone. Your phone's less likely to fall if you're holding it in your whole hand. And I had an epiphany earlier this week. Would you like me to tell you the worst thing that happened in the 20th century? And
Yes.
you're going to think that I'm undermining everything.
Okay.
And I'm not, because it's going to sound trite, but when you think about it, it's going to be a little depressing. So I apologize in advance.
Another uplifting show.
The worst story of the 20th century was Sun Chips giving up on recyclable bags because they were too loud. Do you know anything about this at all?
Oh, no, I haven't heard this. No.
It might be a decade old. It might be 7 years old, but it was just, the more I think about it, the more insane. So Sun Chips, which is a Frito-Lay company or Pepsi company or one of those conglomerates,
probably owned by Nestle,
put out a bag that biodegraded. So a potato chip bag that biodegrades.
Sounds like a great idea.
Potato chip bag that is not pollution. And 6 months later, they stopped doing it because people complained that the bags were too noisy.
Yeah.
And their sales went down. And as we wonder whether we're going to get flooded or whether we're going to get drowned or burned to death, we have to remember that as fat as we are, we still didn't want people to hear us eating potato chips. And that's why the world ended.
Yeah.
And so every time it's a convenience thing. Every time there's a convenience thing that changes the culture or diminishes the culture, I'm very sensitive to it, which is why I hate vertical. But I also don't work in the social media world. And if you want people to look at your stuff on TikTok, it's got to be vertical.
Well, and I think what will happen is maybe this is a softer observation as opposed to laziness. There's some form factor there. You like screens, phones got smaller and smaller and smaller until we could put video through them, and now they're getting bigger and bigger. And the form factor of still being able to hold it in one hand and drive, obviously, is important. And I think until that next stage where we go to like holographic, because if you think about, first it was cinema, right? You had to go to a place and they were, putting light onto a sensor that was probably square and they, big wide thing. And then the TV was invented. And just because of the form factor and the technology around a TV, everything became square again. And then eventually got 4:3.
I want to disagree because cameras came before television and they used landscape settings.
Well, no, that's just my point. Is like the accessibility that was like, it was cinema, it was landscape. And then TVs came and everything was square again. And eventually technology got better and now TVs got wide. I think the borders of phones or personal devices are, whether they're like optics in your eyes or your glasses or the holographic like Tony Stark type stuff, then we'll see that switch back to the natural state of things, which is landscape.
That would make me happy. I noticed I watched a video the other day and it actually edits it for you. If it's a horizontal one and you're holding your phone vertical, it'll just show you what's in the middle of the screen. It won't make it smaller. It kind of does kind of a self fit to screen,
self-correcting
kind of.
So, and here's my assessment, or maybe throw a wrench in the discussion. Even I think 4:3 is actually the optimum. I think it will be bigger, brighter. Like you talk about the detail that you can get in a very small space, and that 4:3. So this is what Zack Snyder shot his version of Justice League in. And so this is the IMAX kind of experience. And that is probably going to win out as the, the resolution of dominance. Yeah.
Very
I don't
cool.
know.
I know. I can't help but derail us. So we sit and we plan a show. We start recording, and I'm like, yeah, let's do something different anyway. So I didn't realize to take the first half of the show up again with Todd's commercial by over talking about what he does. Each week we talk about one cool thing that happened to us because we work here or because we live here. I'm going to go first because Todd is going to bring us into our news section with his one cool thing. My one cool thing is I wrote a book review. I am a medal-winning author, silver medalist, but also I write book reviews. And if there's anything you'd like me to review, feel free to send it along. But I wrote a review of a horrifying, wonderful, complex book called Gangsters versus Nazis. And it is the story of how the Jewish mob crushed the rise of Nazism in 1920s and 30s America. As a history student, I knew that there was a Nazi movement in America. And I also knew that it was a little touch and go, especially in a lot of places, because it was during the Depression and people were looking for answers, and people were out of work and all of these things. It was hard times. I did not know the lengths to which the Jewish community went to crush Nazism in America, or as I say, to drive it back into their basements until the internet was invented. But do you know the name Meyer Lansky?
I don't.
Okay, Meyer Lansky is one of the most famous gangsters. One of the easily the most famous Jewish gangster, except maybe Bugsy Siegel, people may have heard of as well.
Sure.
But Meyer Lansky designed what would become the mob system. And so this whole idea of he kind of invented Las Vegas and that kind of thing. Like he was the numbers guy. So he did a lot of the gambling, but he was also a headbreaker and a violent, vicious, awful person. But he was also anti-Nazi. And there was a judge in New York, and he was an assemblyman, and then he became a judge. And he noticed that the Nazis were using their freedom of speech to gain popularity. And he's also getting letters, like many Jews were, from the old country. Now, most non-Jewish Americans didn't have any idea what was going on with rounding up the Jews until late in the 30s, until almost the 40s. But Jewish people who are getting letters like they took the neighbors last week, or I'll write next week, and then I never hear from anybody again. So they know that the Nazis are disappearing Jews in America, and they knew that the Nazis started in the 20s with the Beer Hall Putsch, all of that, with Hitler just kind of seizing power, winning an election and then seizing power illegally, but then making it legal. And they did it through having these rallies and through recruiting children and all of these things. So he sees it going on in
all very pertinent in today's landscape.
It's about to get worse, right? Because he sees it and there's nothing he can do about it. There's no legal way to stop the Nazis from recruiting. There still isn't. So he gets on the phone and he starts calling murderers that he knows are Jewish, like Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, all these guys. And he says, listen, we have a problem. I can't solve it legally.
Right.
I need you to fix this. Otherwise, they're going to start rounding up Jews and there won't be anything we can do about it until it's too late. Yeah. And Meyer Lansky is like, well, I love breaking heads. I have no compunction about it. And so there was if you want to talk about the Jewish conspiracy, this is the Jewish conspiracy. So the judge starts recruiting mobsters and rabbis because while he doesn't mind taking away the Nazis' First Amendment rights. He doesn't want them killed. He doesn't want to violate the biblical prohibition against murder. So the rabbis come on board as a kind of a like, remember, no murder. And the judge starts telling them where Nazi rallies are, and the mob shows up and just starts grabbing guys and punching them, like literally beating Nazis, throwing them out the window.
I mean, is that where the whole punch a Nazi is,
No, I think it's just a weird coincidence, because I thought of that. I think it's just a weird coincidence. But these guys would show up, and let's say there are 50, and so let's say there are 15, right? 15 professional thugs can probably take 50 drunken Nazis. They would wait for them to start their rally and to get drunk, and then they would go in there with baseball bats and brass knuckles, and they would send people to hospitals. And so the Nazis kept trying to have like secret meetings, and word would get out, and the mob would show up and beat these guys. Eventually all the leaders turned out to be, frauds and liars and criminals, and went to jail on other trumped up charges, by the US government, who was also trying to fight the Nazis but couldn't do it legally. But it was absolutely fascinating. The most fascinating passage of the book. And if you're a young author, writer, what's it called? YA, young adult author.
Oh, young adult.
Here is a free book idea, because I'm never going to write this book. But in New York in the 1930s, the Nazis established a youth camp. Working with the mob, the police department sent their kids to the camp undercover. So you got these Irish cops with blonde kids sending their blonde kids to Nazi camp. And then the kids would just go to camp and come home and say, yeah, we learned this today. Yeah, we learned that today. So undercover Irish kids in Nazi training camps in New York. How is that not already a movie? Like
right.
If this isn't a movie by the end of next year, I don't know what to tell you, because it is compelling stuff.
Wow.
So I already told you, buy the book. Definitely. If you want to read the review, you can go to abagelmanifesto.com, and it's the post up there right now. And of course, I also wrote the review on bookshopblog.com, where you can find that. And what is your one cool thing? And then let's move into the pictures section of the evening.
I think, I'm going to start with my picture, which, if you're watching online, is a nice picture of the Cavalier in Virginia Beach. And because we live here and because we live at the beach, sometimes you have to get away to a different beach to enjoy yourself. And we actually didn't stay at the Cavalier, but this is now part of a whole resort area at, the what they call the north end of Virginia Beach. And we have no clients down there. We stayed at a wonderful Marriott that has recently been renovated. And this was exactly across the street. And we could have breakfast there. It was a beautiful place. And I think because I am now of the age where I can only like get obsessed over like World War II stuff or like random history. I consumed the picture book that was in the hotel, and now I can easily say that I'm expert on the Cavalier because I looked at this picture book for all of 15 or 20 minutes. And
so what are some fun facts about the Cavalier?
So some fun facts about the Cavalier, which also ties into day drinking on Delmarva, is that it's one of the only hotels that has a distillery in it. And it was built originally not that long ago, at least by Berlin standards. It was in the 1920s when it was originally built. And I'm like, oh, my house is older than that. And it was, home to visited by a number of presidents, everyone from Jimmy Carter to Nixon and on back. It, it had a beach club where Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, and Ella Fitzgerald would play, like on the beach, and there was a dance floor built on the beach,
Wow.
and that sort of thing. But one of the most interesting things, talking about the distillery, it was this whole property was refurbished in between 2015 and 2018. So it's all still pretty new as it is, but they have a hunt room, and the hunt room is very much the Annapolis style bar, kind of a public house, big fireplace. This is where everyone would go and they would drink the bourbon and that sort of thing. And then the big rumor is that Nixon enjoyed going here, and this big fireplace is rumored to be where he maybe tossed a couple of important tapes that he didn't want anybody else to find out about. So the story would be a president in peril going to a lavish place at the beach, taking things that he shouldn't take, and disposing them in the fireplace right adjacent to the distillery. So the distillery, they make bourbon and other things. I only had the bourbon.
Oh, so is it an old distillery? Is it called Cavalier Distillery? What's the?
It's called it's been rebranded as the Tarnished Truth. So I think it's all pretty small batch. They have it there on the on the resort area that leads all the way over to the beach. But the distillery did install a distillery at the time of its construction. If you're looking at the picture, in 1926 is the cornerstone. All right.
Wow.
A nice picture of the cornerstone.
And it's an interesting angle too, but you're always good at that.
Yeah, I did the nice wide angle. So it was fun. And, and I think that we're about to enter into our very busy season. And it's important to this little slip away to Virginia Beach for us was only 2 hours away from Ocean City. And, we've had some crappy weather, but we got down there and it just happened to turn. So it seemed like we were in Florida or Hawaii. Right. It just seemed like we were someplace much more tropical. But it was cool. And I don't know, I got pretty connected with the history and everything that's gone up and stories about it. So that was my one cool thing.
That is very cool. And it was also your nostalgia picture, even though it was there's a joke about, now we're nostalgic for 2 minutes ago because we have we have cameras on our phones. Mine is an older photo. Mm-hmm. It's a photo of a very enthusiastic man, very enthusiastically playing his guitar, and a woman who seems to be holding a tarp of some sort in front of him. The man is playing on the Avery Hall Readers stage. And this was a failed event called the Book something or other. It was held by NPR, by the local, by WSDL. Back when I was on it with Stephanie doing the So What's Your Story podcast. And they convinced us to come out there, and there was a book sale and there was all sorts of literary things. It was like Happy Book Day. I can't think of the name of it, but it was a massive, massive failure. A failure in that nobody came. It was just, I don't remember. I feel like it was too hot and too windy, and also in Salisbury. And
the picture looks very windy.
Yeah, well,
If
certainly.
I were to describe the picture in weather terms.
Well, we had a tent that kept blowing down, but Stephanie and I went around and we did some interviews and we got a show out of it. But this guy, he genuinely was enjoying himself and he was good. What you cannot tell, so it's an older guy. He looks like he's probably in his mid 60s. He's all gray. He's got a
Mhm.
gray goatee, even grayer than mine. He's got a hot pink electric guitar and
Yeah.
he is rocking out.
Mhm.
And what's not clear from the photo is that he is rocking out playing children's music. And
Oh,
he has
really?
a microphone that comes around his head, one of those head strap-on microphones, so he could
Right.
walk around, and he is having such a good time. The photo is cropped oddly so that it contains the porta potty, but not the crowd, because there were only 3 children sitting there, and I
Yeah.
felt so awful for this guy. Um, and then the more I've seen this picture several times in the past because I'm always looking to grab something. And every time I look at it, I feel a little bit better because he is very zen. He is doing what he loves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether there's 10 million people, when people say I could never go out in front of 100 million people, then it's like, well, then you don't love what you do enough because this guy is behaving as if he were in front of 100 million people the same way he behaves when he's in front of 6 kids who are
Right.
the thing that the lady is holding, and it's hard to see, it's a green and red. It looks parachutey. What it is it's one of those crawl through tunnels.
Right.
So she's trying to hold up the crawl through tunnel so the kids can play in it. And this guy is playing to nobody. And it's windy. And so if you're right in front of him, it's unbearably loud. And from 40 feet away, it looks like he's not playing at all. But just the
Yeah.
whole idea of him suffering through this and what a great job he was doing, and how depressing it is that Salisbury just, is just it's just a failure as a town. They're doing all sorts of cool
Why do you
things.
have to be? Why do you have to be so Salisbury?
Yeah, it's I follow the mayor Jake Day on Twitter, and he's like,
Mhm.
and we're building yachts, and we're building this, and we have a new building. And like, how come no one ever leaves the building and does anything interesting?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are the restaurant situation is improving, but events like this at the library, dead. The college does college things, and that's all. And I have a bias that I mentioned in my recent Bagel Manifesto podcast, against Southerners, because of the whole slavery thing. And I look around and I only see the segregation here, and I might even be making some of it up. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how much of it is just my bias and how much of it is real. But for me, I look at places and I'm like, they would rather have failure than black people. And
Mm.
that's how I feel about Salisbury. I feel
Yeah.
like, all the kids come, and when you hear the kids' parents, talk like, is it safe to come downtown? I heard that Salisbury wasn't safe. And safe is a upper middle class white person's um
Assessment of how.
whether there are black people there or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, are you going to have to deal with black people? Because if you are, I don't want you to leave the campus. Well, there are black people on campus. Yeah, but they're the okay kind of black people who can go to college. I don't want you around the non-college black people, whoever they may be. It's
Right.
it's depressing. And I I'm sorry, that's again, I didn't get drunk enough. I spent too much time talking and not enough time drinking. And so I found a way to bring it down even more.
There's
And
good people there. I'll say this: there are good people in Salisbury. They just need that tipping point,
It's
right? I
just
mean,
it's but I've been saying it for years. It's funny because I was interested for a long time in moving to Cumberland, which I
mhm.
absolutely love. And I was talking
Yep.
to a friend who lives near Cumberland, and I'm like, it's gotta happen. And this friend's like, we've been saying that for 30 years. And
Yeah.
it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Yes, they have an art scene, but it doesn't ever take. And yes, they have, but it doesn't ever take. And that's what I feel about Salisbury. It's just not gelling. in any
Yeah.
kind of meaningful way. Maybe in another decade. Maybe once, if we ever make it illegal to be openly racist. Otherwise, we're going to need the mob to come. There's no mob, so no one's punching Nazis today.
That's what we need in Salisbury is the mob.
The Jewish mob.
A good Jewish mob to,
Nice Jewish mob.
a nice Jewish mob. And things would work themselves out. I'm quite sure of it.
Why couldn't you join a nice Jewish mob? All right. Well, that'll be the title of this episode.
I love it.
We are up against it. We ran a little long. Thank you for staying with us. Please check in next week. If you like the show, make sure you say something to somebody about it because maybe they would like it too. And I'm a lot of things to say. How about you?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, until next time, remember, at the beach,
It's happy hour whenever you say it is.